Retro.
Hi, this is Fred Tatasciore, and you're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. The Force is strong with both of them.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And we are starting the week with the next episode in our The Clone Wars rewatch. But before we dive into that, Jay, I want to remind everybody what our social media contacts are.
Absolutely. We are so easily found on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
All right. The dish is aligned. The signal's boosted to maximum output. The shield is down, and we are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So this will be our discussion of, again, episode 3 from season 4 of the Clone Wars, which is called Prisoners. And it is the last episode of the Mon Calamari Clone Wars arc. So with that said, Jay, I want to go ahead and give us the summary of the episode, please.
Yes, and we are also waterproofed. So, with the Republic, Gungan, and Mon Calamari armies captured by the Separatists, Prince Lee-Char of Mon Cala has few options left to free his people. He devises a plan to bring all 3 captured armies together with the Quarren to defeat the Separatist invaders. Despite some reluctance, Nosari of the Quarren comes to Lee-Char's aid just as he is about to be publicly executed by Riff Tamson. The Separatists and Riff Tamson are defeated, and Lee-Char is crowned King of Mon Cala.
Yeah, a lot of detail we left out of there that we'll get to over the course of the discussion. But what did you think about this one overall?
Well, overall, I feel like it's a good wrap-up to the Mon Cala arc. It's got a great mix of action, a lot of heart in this one, and of course, our classic Clone Wars storytelling that we're used to. And I liked the underwater combat. I think it was a real strength of the episode. And I liked Ahsoka's role in this as well as a supporting role. And it also gave a lot of different characters some meaningful moments. So I liked that about this one. So overall, I thought it was a good, like I said, a good conclusion to the arc. But what do you think?
Yeah, I liked it. It's fun. It's it's not one of the elite episodes of the Clone Wars when it comes down to it, but
Sure.
And the thing that was nagging me, small nitpick, is like, how much oxygen do they have in those water suits?
I was thinking the same thing. Thank you very much.
Because I don't know how long those captured clones, Anakin, Padmé, and the likes could actually survive underwater. And any rate, that was just something that occurred to me today. Because like they've been there for days.
Yeah,
haven't run out
and
of
their
air yet.
muscles have to be really sore from treading water. I mean, I understand that their, suits are
Mhm.
designed for that, but then I was thinking, I wonder if they have to like do the whole, isn't it the suds thing, after you've been underwater for so long and you come up because of the pressure, like you
Yeah.
all the real world things, that we're thinking about while this is going on.
Well, George Lucas would tell us not to let those details get in the way of a good story.
Right?
So
Yeah.
we will move past that. And but beyond that, no, it's an episode I like. It's kind of fun. It really lies on some tropes that we've seen in other stories that have similar type of themes as this one. But at any rate, that doesn't prevent it from being a good episode. And it was a nice way to wrap up this first arc of season 4. But getting back to some of the details here. So Lee-Char and Ahsoka are in hiding after the resistance, for lack of a better description, the Mon Calamari, the Gungans and clones had gotten defeated by the Separatist droids and Quarren in the prior episode. And so he's doesn't have any options left. He's got to figure out a way to get to his people. And he's convinced that he can get through to the Quarren and have them join him, the Gungans, the Mon Calamari, and the Republic soldiers and defeat the invading Separatists. And this all comes to really a head because Riff Tamson, the Carcharodon, the shark species, basically declares himself the ruler of Mon Cala, and Nasiri, the leader of the Quarren, is basically going to be his puppet ruler in all of this. That is kind of the part I'm talking about with it's kind of a trope where, Nasiri has a bit of buyer's remorse when he knows he's got the Quarren defeated, or he's got the Mon Calamari defeated, and he wants to rebuild Mon Cala after the battle. And then Riff Tamson's like, nope, you forget, this was just a battle, but there's a war going on, and I'm the ruler here. I'll decide what's happening. And so you can tell Nasiri is like kind of regretting this decision here. He didn't want to wipe out the Quarren, but he wanted to give his own people. I'm sorry, he didn't want to wipe out the Mon Calamari. I'm going to keep making this mistake, so everyone just bear with me. But he wanted to give the Quarren, his own people, more of a voice in the government, and he eventually comes around when he sees that he would be complicit in a tragedy at the end of this. Did Riff Tamson kind of come off as maybe a bit too maniacal on the nose as an evil counterpart in this episode?
He was definitely going in that direction as we went through this arc, I feel like. So, yeah, just a little bit. But I think he was very drunk on the power that he was amassing through this entire thing. And I love how you said that there was some buyer's remorse, on the part of Nasiri, because I think that's spot on to say that. But yeah, I think Riff Tamson, when you pointed out the fact that, Count Dooku didn't appoint him to be leader. I appointed myself to be leader. It's like you said, it's almost like if he had a mustache, he'd be twirling it at that point, kind of thing.
Right.
So it did, you talked about tropes, and it's definitely one of those tropes. But I do think it's, I guess, kind of a necessary evil to hit that point home even more, especially with voting against him, and rooting against him, and making sure that the heroes were able to win out and that things were resolved at that point.
Yeah. One of the things that stood out to this episode is the level of violence. And
yes,
before we get into discussion, I'll just address this, the criticism that people might have of what I'm saying here in just a second. Yeah, it's the Clone Wars. There's a fair amount of violence, but typically what we see are droids or clones get blasted. We don't see the clones' faces. They get shot in the armor and then they fall. We see droids who aren't even living beings get shot and they blow up and fall, whatever. We don't see as much. I'm not saying it's completely absent of living beings being shot and killed. And we see plenty of that here. We see torture in this episode. We see someone get blown up, which we'll discuss at the end of this episode. And this, all that. I don't know that it was too over the top, but what was your reaction to the level of violence in this one?
well, I think that we're a lot more attuned to it just because we've been talking about it so much, as far as where on the spectrum of the whole, violence thing these episodes end up being. Because as we look back at the Clone Wars, we're always like, wow, this was a lot more violent than I remember.
Right.
And this is definitely not an exception to that. But I mean, you're right. I mean, there was a Gungan getting shot in the back at close range. Like you pointed out, there was a lot of close range, like up close and personal kinds of things. I mean, even Riff going after Padmé's helmet the way that he did by trying to almost engulf the whole thing with his mouth was also just very unsettling in that way. And I think for me, it's a lot of that is just because I have a fear of drowning. That's like one of my big things. So yeah, as much as I liked these episodes, that was always the one thing in the back of my mind. I was like, oh, that's not good. Oh, that's not good, sort of thing. But
Right.
yes, to your point, there was a lot of violence that seemed a lot more personal in this one.
Yeah, because when Anakin and Kit Fisto get taken to those eels and they're like basically put amongst their tentacles and the eels will get prod and they shock them. It's a form of torture. Riff Tamson's trying to find out where Lee-Char is. And it was funny though, because I forgot about that part of this episode prior to the rewatch. And Jar Jar and Padmé kind of get shackled up with those underwater like claw-like droid things in there. And I was like, man, those two are going to get tortured again, because I'm thinking back to season 1 episode where those two are getting shocked and
Oh,
electrocuted
right.
under
Yeah.
torture. I was like, man, those two just are unlucky. And then I was like, oh no, wait, it's Kit and Anakin. Not that it makes it better, but still, that whole notion that Riff Tamson is torturing them, and then when Anakin's not going to talk, you just alluded to it, he goes and he chomps on Padmé's helmet to create the leak. in order to put pressure on Anakin. And that made me squirm a little bit. I knew Padmé was going to be fine, but this whole, and for all the talk of the violence, the one thing I appreciate about that is they didn't get her like gasping for air and like struggling against like keeping her mouth above the water inside that helmet, stuff like that. Because not only is it drowning, it's the unable to, in that situation, get your head above the water as it's coming into the helmet, and you can't free your hands to do anything about it as well.
Right.
That could be nightmare inducing.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially if there's any kind of experience with something like that going into this, which, goodness forbid that would be the case for anyone, especially children. But yeah, it's pretty brutal.
And then one other thing comes up is that the Separatists know that Lee-Char is a symbol to his people. And as long as he's out there, even if he like left Mon Cala, he would be the prince in exile. And so he would always be a symbol to these people. He could always come back and create an uprising. So they have to get him. And so it's not just a matter of capturing him. They have to end the bloodline in this. I don't have a lot to say about this beyond every time that I start to get sympathetic for Dooku, he pulls something off like this here. And we had the entirety of the Clone Wars, and then we got the audio drama from Kevin Scott. I think it was from Kevin Scott about Dooku, right? Talking about his past. And then we got to see the Tales of the Jedi series where we got to understand why it was he fell. And I had some empathy here, but man, can he kill it in a heartbeat with things like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, it's obviously he's a Dark Lord of the Sith at this point. So just like Anakin, we knew he could be an amazing human being as well. And when he fell hard.
Right. So what did you think about Lee-Char's plan to break into the prison and inspire his people? And then, it's the classic South Park joke, step 1, break into the prison, inspire the people. 2, 3, rebellion, we free ourselves. What is step 2? He doesn't know. He's kind of making it up as he goes along.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect. Obviously, Lee-Char has been, we've talked about this in the last couple of episodes, that he's been thrust into this position where now he has to not only become a leader, but he has to become a leader during a very horrifically stressful time for his people and all of Mon Cala. And I think that there's some naivete that goes into what he's wanting to do. It is a grand plan, and it's obviously something that he feels that needs to be done. And yes, it does need to be done. But I'm not completely sure that, obviously he thought things through as well as he needed to, but I guess he didn't really have a chance to do that. I mean, you have to do things in the moment, just like the fortune cookie said, crowns are inherited, kingdoms are earned. So he was trying to earn his kingdom, as you said, by trying to gain the trust of his people. And the only way to do that was to overthrow Riff Tamson and try to get Nasiri back on his side.
So over the course of these past 3 episodes, do you think he truly evolved into a leader, or did he just kind of fall into this? What's your opinion?
A little bit of both, I feel like. I do think that had it not been for the aid of the Gungans and the Jedi, that there's no way that he would have been able to do what he did. So it was just a good thing that he had that type of support. But I mean, obviously, I'm glad for the way that it ended up turning out, and hopefully he'll be able to reflect on these experiences, and it'll make him an even better king. But I think he's laid the groundwork for a good sovereignty for his people and for the sacrifices that he had to make to get there. But how do you feel?
Yeah, I think they did an adequate job in exploring his evolution across these 3 episodes. By this 3rd episode, he had gone to making his own decisions and realizing that there aren't other options, that I've got to take advantage of the one thing that's in front of me. I've got to be the inspiration of my people. I've got to go free them. I can unite everybody, and I can convince the Quarrens to switch sides in this. And then he goes out and makes it happen. Whereas in previous episodes, we talked about this in the first episode of the season, where he would hear Akbar say something. He'd hear the senator say something. He's like, yeah, we'll do that. And that's not to say that taking advice from trusted advisors is a bad thing. No, you want intelligent people giving you their input so you can make an informed decision. But he was making like one decision and then countermanding himself in the next. So it was subtle in some regards, but I do feel like he did kind of come into his own over this own story arc and found his own brand of leadership, which is being a bit more decisive, making the tough call, trusting in his instincts, but still being receptive to receiving the advice from those that are worthy of giving it here. They probably, it's one of those things where you don't want them to necessarily hit you over the head with a message, but they probably could have emphasized it a bit more than they did.
No, I agree. And I think that there's going to be has to be a point where Lee-Char kind of reflects after all of the dust settles, if it can settle in the ocean, but you know what I mean, that he's going to look back at this here in a couple of days and be like, whoa, what just happened? You know, and the gravity of it kind of starts to hit him because, of course, you know, we've been talking about our Darth Bane Path of Destruction book like all year so far. And even Bane was a little bit, you know, put off, if you will, by some of the actions that he took, and it kept him up at night. So I'm wondering if Lee-Char is going to be like, holy cow, all of that just happened. And wow, I did all of those kinds of things, which one of the big things is coming up in our discussion.
Right. So, you know, as this thing goes on, you know, he gets captured by the droids, gets taken to Riff Tamson and Nasiri, and you know, this is where Tamson declares himself to be the ruler of this planet, and Nasiri's just like, what happened? Wait a minute. You know, it was supposed to get aid from the Separatists, and now they're in control of the whole thing. And it's another thing that we've heard of, that, you know, once you invite an enemy in, you know, they give you the aid, but then they never leave. And that it's like a trope for the Empire, right? And we got to see that in Maul Shadowlord, that we cannot call the Empire on Maul because as soon as they get here, they're not going to leave. They're going to take everything over. Similarly, you know, in Andor, when the Empire showed up on Gorman, they built an armory. They basically got their hooks into the planet. They helped facilitate a resistance that they use as an excuse to crack down on the place. And so the Empire is basically taking out of the Separatist playbook that gets illustrated here. So I do kind of like the this repeated theme across these different series. But you know, and the other thing I liked is that Lee-Char was able to trust his instincts on Nasiri. You know, this was a man in Nasiri who was a friend of his father's. And even at and during episode 1, when the Quarren were talking about, you know, taking over the planet, Nasiri did come to Lee-Char and gave him his condolences. You know, said, your father was a trusted friend in this situation, but I got to do what's best, or what he thought was best at the time. And so he was able to adequately read people, which is a good quality of leadership.
Yeah, that's a good point because he could have very easily just written him off and said, oh, he's a traitor. He's aligning, you know, with Riff Tamson now, and this is the person that I feel like killed my father, and how dare he? But he didn't give up on that loyalty. So I like that.
And then he believed in this so much, that being Lee-Char, when he broke into the prison and he was with some of the other Mon Calamari, you know, the ones he was giving them their orders that, you know, act when, you know, how will we know when to go is what he's asked. And he says, well, act when you see a Quarren attack the Separatists. And because he knew he'd be able to get through to them. So he is a good judge of characters, which is a good quality of a leader, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we get to the conclusion of the episode, you know, just as Lee-Char is about to be executed, about the Carcharodons. Additional Carcharodons have shown up to help Riff Tamson rule this planet. And the Nasiri gives one of the other Quarren that little baton that he gives to Akbar. I love this. That was inspired by the Kenner action figure accessory that Akbar had back in the 80s. And back then it was just supposed to be a baton, but the guy who was creating this character and they're writing it for this episode always used that baton as a blaster when he's a kid. So he turned it into a blaster for this episode, even though that was never its original intent.
That is awesome. I did not know that. I love it
Yeah.
when you drop knowledge like that. That's so cool.
And so, Akbar gets in action, the Gungans, the Jedi, everybody springs in action here, and then they're successful. But it comes down to that final confrontation between Lee-Char and Riff Tamson. And Lee-Char pulls off, I wasn't sure exactly what this was supposed to be, but it was a bomb attached to a knife, which he throws into Riff Tamson's shoulder. I thought it was going to count down and blow up Riff Tamson, but it doesn't. As Tamson is swimming towards Lee-Char, he shoots it and causes it to blow up. And it's supposed to be an homage to Jaws with the way that the shark got killed at the end of that episode here. And we even see Tamson's floating head as it goes by. After cool visual, but I think that was a bit much for this animated series.
Well, like you were saying, with the violence, you see just like Tamsin chunks everywhere, and you even see the blood kind of dissipating into the water. That was pretty gruesome. I mean, it definitely hit home in that way. But I'm with you. I thought that the bomb was going to be a countdown kind of thing, because didn't Riff Tamson use something similar where he was like stabbing it into some of the his enemies? It was the Gungans, I believe, and they were just kind of like exploding as well. So I thought that was the same thing.
It just happened. He right before that, he quickly swam around a whole bunch of people and put those bombs on it, Gungans and clone troopers and the like, and they all blew up. And so, it was an interesting choice for this episode. So, but the neat thing about it is that it did give Lee-Char a little bit of a hero moment there in front of all of his people.
It did, and he did it very calmly. And that's why I say, I feel like in a couple of days he's going to be like, "What just happened? What did I do? How do I feel about this? I just completely blew up an enemy."
Right. And so the episode concludes with Lee-Char going into the throne room, and he gets crowned. The Quarren pledge their loyalty, and then he, being Lee-Char, pledges his loyalty to the people of Mon Cala, both the Quarren and the Mon Calamari. And that's the episode. Just some other random notes on this. I thought it was, I didn't know if I wanted to laugh or not when Padmé's helmet was broken and that water was seeping in, and then Anakin and Kit Fisto created that force bubble, which worked, but then it was ultimately Jar Jar who spit on the helmet. And that wasn't it. It was that like Padmé's like, Jar Jar fixed it. It's like she didn't really want to say how. I don't think she wanted to think about it too much. But what did you think about that?
Well, again, we talk about well-placed humor, and that was definitely a little bit of levity in this episode, as was when Anakin kept getting shocked and Kit Fisto said, "It's better if you just don't move as much, or if you don't talk as much," I think is what he said. So there was just a little bit of humor there as well. But I was kind of, again, a trope, I guess you could say. Jar Jar doesn't, want to get listened to. He's like, "Misa have an idea." And Anakin's like, "Not now, Jar Jar." Which, why wouldn't you listen to a species that spends part of their existence underwater? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but I thought that was in Gungan waterproofing. That's how we used to swim so good. So that was a new revelation for sure. And then Padmé saying, "I can't see. Can you tell me what's going on?" It's like, "Oh, gee, you don't think you can see? Wonder why."
Yeah. What's the name of that product where they always have the loudmouth salesman who throws the seal on the leaking bucket? That's what made me think of when Jar Jar spit on
Gosh,
the,
that's funny.
set it and forget it, or seal it, whatever. But
Like the Flex Seal thing?
yeah, the Flex Seal thing. That's what I was thinking there. I was like, oh, Gungans have a new export they can send around the galaxy, fixing leaks.
If they ever need a little bit of economic, uptick, they can market that for sure.
Anything else from this episode that stood out to you?
No, I don't think so. I was going to mention the, somewhat well-placed humor as we were going along, but we already addressed it.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be a little bit shorter conversation, but I think we talked about so many of the themes that showed up here when we were discussing the prior two episodes. So that's okay. We'll go ahead and start wrapping up things here. And we'll be looking forward to next week when we get back into the Clone Wars again as part of our rewatch. But in the meantime, thank you for joining us for this episode. And make sure you do subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already, so that you'll get that next episode in our rewatch. And you can go find all of the episodes that we've done with the Clone Wars and Rebels and everything else, either on your podcatcher of choice, or if they've expired there, over on retrozap.com, which is the home of Podcast Stardust, as well as a bunch of other great shows on the network. I know Aiden Joyce stuff has been pretty active lately, so go check out what they're doing. And of course, we appreciate your ratings, reviews, comments, follows, and all that on your podcatcher of choice. Thanks to everyone who does interact with us. I enjoy reading those comments when I do find them. And Jay will let you know how to get in touch with us here in a second. So, Jay, how do people do that?
Very easy to do so. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. And we also maintain some Pinterest boards. So if you're looking for some fun ideas for some Star Wars themes, projects, fashion, lifestyle, party ideas, that kind of thing, you can head over there. And we also have our 2 YouTube outlets. So the traditional YouTube as well as YouTube Music. So you can hit up those 2 platforms and you can find all of our episodes there as well. And if you'd like to drop us a line, we'd love it if you do so. And you could do that at podcaststardust@gmail.com. So if you have any questions for us or any comments that don't fit nice and tidy into a comment section or on social media, that's the best place to do that. And if you would like to support the show, you can pick up one of our t-shirts or sweatshirts, coffee mugs, all kinds of fun things over on our TeePublic store. And the link to that is in our show notes. And if you do happen to grab something, please snap a picture and post it online and tag us, because we always like seeing where those products end up in the wild. So once again, that link is in our show notes.
All right. Coming up on the show on Wednesday, we are back to the Darth Bane Path of Destruction book club with a discussion of chapters 18 and 19. And then on Friday, we will be wrapping up the week with a look at Star Wars news, assuming there is any. As we were just talking about in the news episode last Friday, it's the calm before the storm with San Diego Comic-Con, so it seems unlikely there'll be many major announcements this week. And if there aren't, we'll figure out something else to do. But with that, thanks for listening to episode 1060 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great week, and until next time, may the Force be with you.